Good morning, and thank you for being here. I apologize, I was a little late. I'm Republican leader Brian Cutler, and I want to thank you guys for taking some time out of your morning. This morning, we're announcing that we've sent a letter to the Pennsylvania Attorney General, Michelle Henry, requesting that her office investigate Philadelphia District Attorney Larry Krasner for possible election law violations relative to his handling of the arrest warrant issued for Representative Kevin Boyle. While we all continue to be concerned about Representative Boyle, there are a few things that we know about the situation surrounding the issuance and then the withdrawal of the arrest warrant. We know that the arrest warrant, a warrant that necessitated the involvement of the DA's office, was announced a week before the primary election. An election in which the subject of that arrest warrant was a candidate for office and was being opposed by his own party's leadership. We know that the announcement about the arrest warrant being withdrawn was literally done on the eve of the 2024 primary election. We know that DA Krasner has a history of political, inappropriate, and unprofessional management of his office, an office that under his leadership has a history of putting its own agenda first and victims, public safety, and adherence to the law last. What we do not know is how this arrest warrant was issued with such a substantial error. What we do not know is what was the motivation behind making a major announcement about the warrant being withdrawn on the eve of the election after a week's worth of mail-in votes were cast with that incorrect information. While DA Krasner has said his office will conduct an internal investigation into how this has happened, an office with such a suspect history should not be looking at itself for fault. As such, we believe that the investigation by the Office of the Attorney General is not only warranted, but entirely appropriate to understand the scope of what has transpired. In calling for this investigation, we do not have any specific results or outcomes in mind. But with the history of the Philadelphia District Attorney's Office under the leadership of Larry Krasner, we can assume that there are likely concerns and that nothing is entirely above board. Thank you, and I'll turn things over to Representative White.
Thank you, Leader Cutler, and for members of the House Republican Caucus for joining me today. Good morning, everyone. We are here today to call on the Attorney General to investigate the latest bungled incident out of the Philadelphia District Attorney's Office. In this case, the public is left wondering if the DA coordinated and approved an arrest warrant application for a violation of a protection from abuse order against State Representative Kevin Boyle, just 1 week before his primary election. There was national media attention around this. A manhunt basically took place looking for this legislator for over a week. And then just a big whoops. Nothing to see here, everybody. We're just going to continue on, and I'll do an investigation, is what the district attorney said. Unfortunately, the DA went on to just 1 day before the election, rescinding the arrest warrant, claiming that the PFA was not in effect at the time of the alleged violation due to missing information. Representative Boyle went on to lose his re-election bid. And while there is no defending the actions of Representative Boyle, my concern and priority is the process that took place that raises serious questions about the role the district attorney played and if there was any attempt to interfere with an election. This incident adds fuel to an already troubling pattern of lies, incompetence, and misconduct under District Attorney Larry Krasner's leadership. Since taking office, the Philadelphia DA and his office has shown a concerning disregard for victims, court procedures, and the very essence of judicial responsibility. We've seen the DA's office repeatedly disregard the rights of victims and side with criminals over those who were harmed. We've seen courts lambast this office for its staggering level of dysfunction and incompetence, with seasoned judges like Judge Barbara McDermott and Judge Mitchell Goldberg catching his office in lies, attempting to unjustly convict an officer of murder, or to spring a convicted murderer off of death row. Their condemnation of his inexperienced handling and misleading actions is critical in key cases. It is a telltale sign that we cannot trust this district attorney to tell the truth about what happened in this case either. Former Police Commissioner Outlaw voiced her concerns about the continuous cycle of rearresting individuals who should never have been released, individuals like Jamir Harris, who was freed only to face new murder charges. This isn't just an administrative failure, it's a dangerous pattern that jeopardizes public safety and erodes trust in our legal system. The case of Representative Kevin Boyle is not an outlier. It is a symptomatic part of an office that has repeatedly exploited its power, not merely bending the rules, but breaking them. When a district attorney's office can mislead a grand jury and deny a police officer his civil rights, as noted by Justice Kevin Doherty, we must confront the reality that this is not about isolated incidents. It's about this district attorney's systemic failures. A district attorney who has proven himself to be untrustworthy cannot be entrusted to carry out an internal investigation, as Krasner has promised to do. Therefore, we are calling for the Attorney General, the chief law enforcement officer of this Commonwealth, with the authority to investigate violations of election code, to investigate this series of actions that resulted in an improper warrant being issued against a sitting member of the Pennsylvania House of Representatives 1 week before an election. If any wrongdoing is confirmed, all appropriate legal action must be taken and pursued. Our commitment to justice demands no less. We owe it to the citizens of Philadelphia to get to the truth of this matter, and to all Pennsylvanians to ensure that our justice system is led by those who uphold the law with integrity, competence, and respect for the rights of all people. Thank you, everyone. We'll take questions. Are there any questions? Yes.
Do you have some? Okay. So the district attorney's office can't approve charges unless they're recommended by the Philly Police Department. So do you think that the department itself and the detective who had been investigating this should also be a part of this investigation?
I think that the district attorney has the authority to approve and sign off on applications for violations of a PFA order and to get an arrest warrant issued for that in that regard. So we want to know exactly what transpired and get to the bottom of this for the public to be able to have the truth of the matter. I think this is a high-profile incident, and the fact that there was so many news media across the country that were interested in finding out what was going on and where this legislator was, that we need to make sure that the truth comes out and that the proper authority is actually investigating this case, which should be the Attorney General.
But it was the police who recommended that and asked the district attorney's office to put out the warrant. So should they also be investigated?
We want to make sure that all of the proper procedures were followed, and that includes the actions of the district attorney as well, yes.
I think it's also worth noting that Philadelphia is the only county in the Commonwealth where the district attorney has complete oversight of the issuance of warrants in this manner. So ultimately, the buck would stop with him, but we expect her investigation to look at every aspect. Other questions?
I mean, I know we're not asking for anything specific, but can you tell us what actions Michelle Henry could take?
Well, that would obviously be determined by what is found during the investigation, but it's all outlined in the law in terms of what would be appropriate. I don't want to suppose what actions may or may not have been undertaken by the district attorney, so I think it's best to let an investigation go forward, learn all the facts, and then the law will dictate what those results are. And I think that's very important because that's really what we're asking to have happen in this investigation, because that's not the process that was followed. The law was not followed and the proper procedures weren't followed, which is what resulted in this issue. Because the next obvious question is, if this could happen here, where else could it happen? And more importantly, how do you ensure that it does not happen going forward? And that's ultimately going to be the crux of our request to the Attorney General.
More specifically, how you think the election code comes into this, and could there have been other statutes violated, such as CHIRA?
Well, I'm not going to jump ahead of the investigation. I think the first step is very important in terms of the investigation. The Attorney General, and this is the important part, will have absolute jurisdiction over this as they go forward. our main concern is on the eve of an election, does it qualify as election interference? So that's the starting point. If there are other laws that are implicated, I assume the Attorney General will take that into consideration upon their recommendations and then ultimately their actions.
Is this the first, in theory, the Attorney General's hearing about this, or would you, any of you guys reached out to her or her office to say, hey, we're thinking about this, and what is their reaction?
Well, obviously, because it would be an investigation, you don't want to have a lot of ex parte contact. So we did forward the letter about 30 or 40 minutes ago to the office. We'll allow them to review it, but I think it's a very serious matter and needs to be handled accordingly.
Spoken more with Leader Bradford about Representative Boyle's continuation to vote, and what are those conversations at this point?
Well, our concern that we raised repeatedly on the floor was while an active arrest warrant was out, that we had concerns about how he could continue to vote. They obviously fell back on the rules that they passed with a partisan vote to justify their ability to continue to vote him. That's the first piece. The second piece is obviously we were also concerned about his well-being. And now that the arrest warrant has been rescinded, our original objection is no longer there. But in regards to how it should be handled, I know that we had talked a couple days ago on the floor. He wanted to follow up, and I'm still waiting for a return call. All right.
And you're basically coming, in some ways it could be viewed as Kevin Boyle's defense. Are you surprised that Democrats haven't come out and called for this as well?
Well, I think it's important to note, one, we're defending the law in the process. That's what's important. I'm not surprised they haven't come out because, quite frankly, they leveled not only an opponent but hundreds of thousands of dollars against him politically. So, of course, that would be their position. All right. Thank you very much. Appreciate everybody being here.